Welcome everybody to the Brian Piergrossi podcast. That's me, Brian Piergrossi, with Marya Stark. Hi, Marya.
Hi, Brian.
So I messaged you and I told you that I had this really old video. I think it's from like 2008, maybe,
Ooh.
maybe even earlier. And you were in Las Vegas. I was in Las Vegas, and I was doing this event. It was at a house. It was like a house gathering, house workshop thing. We called it the Big Glow in Las Vegas. And you came in like halfway through, and you had like these kind of like a, you looked kind of like at that time like sort of like a librarian. You had those glasses on, and you came in, and someone was like, "Just gonna play some music." I'm like, "Okay." You just took out your acoustic guitar and just started like whipping out these like amazing lyrics, and it was awesome. So that was my first connection to you. That was, like I said, at least 12 years ago. It might even
That was
be longer.
2008. That was when I was in Las Vegas for 6 months in 2008. I had actually just graduated college, and I was doing my music therapy internship in Las Vegas.
Did you go to UNLV or something?
No, I went to Chapman University, but the program, my internship director had an amazing music therapy program in Vegas, which served a lot of different kind of communities. And so I moved out there for that internship so I could get the kind of wide range of experience that it provided.
It's an interesting place, right? Las Vegas?
Las Vegas is very interesting. I actually, fun fact, I recorded Lineage when I was in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Like I went there, and I had spontaneously, my partner had set up a super dope spot for us to stay, and I went into like eight days offline to just bust out Lineage, and it happened in Las Vegas. It was like a return to that town. And Vegas is super trippy. I love the Red Rocks. It's definitely one of the, has like a mystical glory to it, but the town itself is full of mischief and ghosts and weirdness.
Yeah. I think people that aren't familiar with the area don't realize the nature that's around there that you can access so easily. It's like once you leave the city, like that's it for like hundreds of miles in every direction. And there is some areas you can get a little bit of green, not too much, but you can get a little bit up in those mountains, like it's Mount Charleston,
right?
The Red Rocks, and there's the desert.
So beautiful.
Yeah. But I found the people were interesting. Like it was beyond what I expected, because you do have a lot of creative people, because you have those casinos. So you have like, jugglers and magicians and musicians and dancers and all kinds of interesting people I would run into and connect with there. It was a fascinating place.
I remember, there like the way that I connected, I think probably to your community, was through the First Friday art scene. And I met a woman who introduced me to the like love and light hippie community and creative healing arts community in Vegas. And it was trippy. They were putting on events. I mean, it felt very familiar to me. I'm like, oh, we did this in California.
Yeah.
Here it is in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Woo. I was super young, just out of college. And it was like a pleasant surprise to meet folks that were into the stuff I was into.
There was something really cool happening at that time. And it kind of, as happens in life, is where something happened where it didn't exist anymore, like maybe 6 months or a year after that. But there was this cool convergence of people that happened. I was just passing through too, but I ended up being there, I think, for not as long as you, but maybe like a month or two or something.
Right on.
Yeah. So I first became aware of you then. And so then I was, like I said, you just out of college, and I sort of was able to kind of like follow your evolution from then, and like to see, everything that you moved through. And it's been awesome to just see, the things that you move through and you're open to, and really just, how do you, like, let's say someone's listening to this and they want to be a musical artist, but they're kind of like, maybe they have some fear, or they're not quite sure, like, am I good enough? Or, maybe there's some self-worth issues, they're kind of young, maybe they're like the age you were at that time. Because I felt, from the outside, it seems like you just had a lot of confidence to just kind of put yourself out there. And was that like your internal experience, or how do you get to that space?
Yeah, it's funny to think about it. I still wrestle with the voices that are not mine, the voices that we acquire through a life that kind of come in to interject their opinions on the matter. And I think creative process is married in some way to navigating those voices. So for me, I think how I dealt with those voices was I brought them into my creative process. Like they didn't get to escape, and they didn't stop me from creating. They were just part of what we created with. So, because it's that thing, it's like, oh wow, someone wants to be a musical artist, but they have fear. I think like I both felt the one inside of me who was like, I'm meant to do this. This is my charge for life. This is what I came here. And all of the voices were like, this is the hardest thing ever. I'm never going to be able to thrive. And I think exploring the paradox of how both of those things can live inside of a one human psyche became really interesting to me as an author. I was like, oh wow, like I'm not just this thing that's this like urgency towards creative expression. I'm also this thing of like identity and fear and other voices that aren't mine. And so I feel like I just took them to the creative temple and was like, what do I do with all this shit? And we've just been working it out ever since.
I love that. It's like taking the fear, or taking like what could be called like the shadow, and like actually making it the fuel for your art.
Yeah.
Right?
And like exploring shadow, right? Like exploring it inside of a container of creativity. So I just wrote songs about everything, about whatever I was going through, whatever I was feeling. And if certain parts of me weren't getting written about, I would ask them why, or I'd just journal a lot, you know. It's like and I also like, I had to do it in order to survive. Like creativity wasn't an option for me. It was like an intense drive and so being with the fear just came along with the process. Like there wasn't overriding it or escaping it or outgrowing it. I mean, I think I've gone through stages of overcoming certain kinds of fear, but then for me, I mean, new fears arise and like new existential paradoxes came to surface that were beyond like whether or not I should do this or whether or not I'm worthy to do that. Like those questions transformed into bigger fears, like what are we doing on planet Earth, you know, like are we going to survive the century?
There's a lot of that in the air right now.
Yeah.
But then you put that into your music, right?
Yeah, it all goes in. It's just like, for me, music has become the alchemical cauldron where I get to just stir with the stirrings, you know. What do I feel? What do I think? What do I believe? What parts of me are discordant with each other? What do they have to say? Where did they learn those things? It all becomes fodder, I think, for personal growth and transformation. And I think for me as an artist, it's always been about self-discovery. It's always like, wow, how much of myself can I get to know through the mirror of writing music?
It's like a practice of self-awareness.
Yeah, it's like definitely like one of the great alchemical mirrors.
And I feel like one of the things that stands out to me about you too is, to me, it's like music is just one component of your creativity. And to me, it's like everything you do is creative, is like this creative, like I call it being a life artist. You know, it's like, it's like this sense of like you're bringing that creativity into everything. So for example, like there's the music, but then there's the writing, which is like this, like basically like this beautiful poetry that goes into your music. And the music is really creative too. It's like, you know, it's like, I was feeling into like, what would I even say your genre is? You know, it's like, it feels like it's just uniquely you, right? It's just the unique expression of what you are, which is really inspiring. Like there's not many artists that I tune into where it's like, they're not trying to fit some box. They're just really being what's authentic to them. And the style can be different depending on this particular song, what's coming through in the song. But then your visual, like your photography, your kind of videos, or your film expression, the films and videos that you do, your outfits, right? So it's like, feels like there's like a creativity, and like it's not just this one thing. It's like there's this creativity in like all these different expressions of yourself that you find the vehicles to create and express yourself through?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just have so many options. And I think part of that's due to the like nature of having grown up and being immersed in multimedia. And it's like, oh, it's all available to you know, like share the inner world with. And so I love discovering more. I feel like I'm getting to know more of myself as an artist through exploring the different mediums and then finding how they can all come together to tell a good story or to just demonstrate something that was evocative for me and took me on a ride. And then I get to share that ride I went on with other people.
Yeah, like following you on Instagram, you share some stunning visuals, like just some stunning, you know, photographic creations. And it's almost like it's like you're creating like a different world. That's what I feel like with your music. Like I listen to your music or your visuals or whatever you're expressing. It's like a different world or dimension that someone's being invited to step into. Is that how you kind of feel it, or how would you?
I'd say that's kind of part of it. I think world building is sort of one of the fun ways that we can use light and shape and organization of pixels. So it's like, oh, here's a whole realm, and then we can go enter the realm and sort of have an experience of reflection with, you know, how I'm, you know, broadcasting the realm. And yeah, it's, for me, it's like as I'm inside of it, it's like, how do I access different like ranges of frequency? You know, it's like, oh wow, this is like the frequency of the strange elf land. Okay, like who am I inside of that? How can I play inside of this architecture of character and be like, oh, that was fun, cool. Here you go. Like, what else is, you know, I think growing up in the theater too, like character development and just feeling characters sort of jump out from the dreams that want to come play, and then I get to say, well, why did she want to come play? Like, who do I get to be in relationship to these different characters? What part of me do I get to access and have an experience of directly, and then have like a feedback expression of how other people relate to that frequency? It's really fun. Like, it's just kind of been a discovery process of how I relate to parts, like characters as archetypes, and then how other people relate to them, and seeing what gets evoked in a space when certain frequencies have a voice or have a visual presence, and then they're like, it occupies that spirit of something. And it does feel like it kind of pops in from another dimension, from like a dream dimension, with a little visitation, and has a little poem that it wants to share. And there, you know, and it's like, that's enough. Like, it's like, oh, well, why do we do it? It's like, well, why not? You know, it's, if we can bridge these places inside of us that do want to just share a little bit of themselves, and we can make space for them, it creates more. It's like a nice fun texture to play inside of.
There's something really liberating about what you're saying, though, because I was like feeling to this today about like cause and effect. And there's kind of like this, from this awakened consciousness, it's like, well, there's only now, right? There's only ever now. It's like we're in the timeless now. And so it's sort of like, well, then here's what's coming through me. Here's what this is right now. It doesn't have to have a cause or have a reason to be an effect for something else. It just is what it is. This is the world that I'm creating, because that's what's coming through me and expressing it. And like, when because I was listening to your lyrics, and, you know, not that this is unique, there's other great poetry where it's like, I don't really know what she's talking about, you know, like it doesn't really make sense, but you feel it. You feel the truth of it deeper than the mind. You feel it like in your heart, in your soul, in your essence. You know, we can, you know, some of Rumi's great poems or other great poets, it's the same thing. It's like, it's not like it's not non-linear. That's the word I'm looking for. It's not following this linear, okay, this goes to this, goes to this. It's just this like opening to some essence that's here, and it's like a portal you're invited into, and you can feel it deeper than the mind. And I think we're in an era right now where we can be so in our heads, you know, but anything that kind of gets us deeper than just the surface level of the mind is really liberating, you know, and freeing.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think like the play with nonlinear and the play with, that's the cool thing. Like you're saying, oh, there's this thing that you can feel. Cause sometimes I write things, I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. It like tumbles through and it feels good.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, this feels good. It tumbles through. And then like later I'll reflect and I'll sort of grok some pieces of meaning that arise for me, and it changes depending on the mood I'm in. And then like there's sometimes whole stories will pop through these very ambiguous lyrical structures. I'm like, great, that's what I was trying to carve out with words. And I like it's one of the things I love about poetry is that it does access something beyond the meaning maker, where it like there's a knowingness, but there's some ways that words kind of can unlock parts of ourselves because it sneaks around the syntax we're anticipating hearing, and it kind of rearranges how we're seeing the frame for a moment to just have this like kind of this sense of champagne, or like this bubbly nuance of a frequency that feels like essence. And I think that's a really beautiful word. That's a word I really love to be in connection with when I'm writing. And it's something I'm always striving for, I think, or not striving, but it's one of the things that's trying to coax me out of my, you know, shell of self. Like, oh, this sort of infatuation with essence, you know, and what is essence beyond the labels or the meaning that I've acquired for it? Is there something beyond that music and the arts can take me through, because it's riding on a different energy that's beyond the mind?
Yeah, and I can definitely feel from listening to your music and your expression that you're rooted in this, you can call it different things, but there's some sort of spiritual awakening that you've had or you've experienced, or you've tapped into these deeper truths that is the source of where your creativity and your art is coming from. I'd love to hear like just a little bit about what that journey is, or anything like that's kind of stood out, any books or any teachers or things that stood out to you, or experiences that you had that opened you that on the path.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many.
Yeah.
The path is such a funny word. I mean, it's a path, I think, of becoming human, right? And there are particular moments that can stand out, especially if we have like sudden experiences where suddenly life force energy is gripping us, and this idea of who we thought we were suddenly falls away, and now we're like in this like wild sort of thrashing realm of understanding, like seeing between the veils, and then trying to put ourselves back together to function in the world, to like tell people the good news that it's all an illusion and it's, you know, we're connected to love. So I've had a number of experiences like that, which, you know, some people call that like a Kundalini experience. I thought I was going crazy. And I've had a few of those, and luckily I had some great guides in my life that were like, no, this is an experience that happens, and it's energy that's at the base of your spine, and sometimes spontaneously it'll just open up. Congratulations, it's a present. And then sometimes it'll happen through a lot of like yoga practice or meditation practice. So I did have like a spontaneous Kundalini awakening when I was a younger person, at probably 18 or 19. And it catalyzed a dissolving of the self, so to speak. I mean, I definitely thought I was losing my mind for a while, and those who loved me and were close to me probably did too. We've all had a good laugh about it now. But it was a wild, enriched time, because it was almost like taking hallucinogenics. So it's like the fabric of reality was just melting away, and all of a sudden the face of divine, that was the unnameable divine, was starting to show itself everywhere. And there's this like homecoming to this like thing that no one was talking about when I was a kid, that I like felt was like always going to be there, and it was like something more magical going on than anyone's kind of pointing to, and like feeling crazy and alone. And then suddenly it's like, oh, these epiphany moments where like the whole universe is speaking to you through everything. and you start meeting people who are like have those same experiences, so we're like, oh, we're not crazy, and then people start putting language on it like, oh, we're star seeds and we've come to the earth to activate the galactic frequencies of blah, and I'm like, sure, that sounds good. It's like, give me a myth to cling on to. I'll take the star seed mythos, no problem. And then yeah, I think it's been just an ongoing journey of excavating the personal mythology, learning about other mythology, understanding how energy runs through the body has been really helpful. I studied some qigong and medical qigong, and that really helped me kind of get a grip on how to work with multidimensional perception, which is like this sort of non-linear experience of like, wow, if we're doing quantum healing work and this time we can actually change how we're relating to the past and actually draw that energy, emotional energy that's trapped there, and we can actually heal from injuries, and we can actually form a whole new identity because we're no longer being informed by things that happen to us in a way that it would hold us back in time, that we're actually getting all of our energy back and getting to discover more of who we really are as human beings. And I think that that's what those energies are really cool for, like having, and I think that's why people get into, oh, I want to do Kundalini processes, because they call it like these awakening processes, but it's really, my experience, which is limited, it's a process of retrieving our essence. There's that word again. It's calling back our essence from all the places that we've like leaked it out, or thought that we were something else, or like formed little identity threads in things that happened to us in the past. And these like awakening happens, kind of like shuck off all of these identity skins, like old skins. They're just like, oh, now, and then we have to meet kind of reality in a new way, and we get a little bit more agency of how we get to decide how we get to show up, form new values. And so those are some of the things that I experienced, just like learning about energy, getting congruent with myself, doing, trauma healing work, and learning how to access more life force energy, and then direct that to creative process.
Well, that was an amazing answer. Thank you for that. I'm like, wow. But you mentioned something I was just about to ask you, multidimensionality, being multidimensional.
Oh yeah.
So you already answered part of the question. It was I was feeling like you're multidimensional, like you move through different dimensions. So you can talk about that. But the thing that I'm interested in is I've worked with clients that are multidimensional, and a lot of times people are multidimensional. It's great that they're traveling these different dimensions, but then they can have a hard time like integrating and like grounding in this one, like the human one.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's something that you've experienced, or if that's been like a
I've
challenge.
definitely experienced that. I mean, I think this word multidimensional, it's super sexy for us 5D folk. It's a hot word. It's a hot word in the galactic rainbow tribe, multidimensional. And what I would say for the experience of being these like galactic trackers, tracking wide view of things, and like the nuances of all of these layers of consciousness at the outer edges of the things, and the secret codes and the things, that's like a really powerful strategy. At least one of the frames that I work with is that is a result of a survival strategy that is it's like a personality skill, and like an energetic skill that one might develop if they have certain kinds of trauma early on in their lives, that make the body not a totally fun, safe, and habitable place. And so that there's like a development of all of these other mystical Jedi powers of like seeing the great galactic magic, but the body hasn't caught up to all of the wisdom yet. And so what I've experienced in that with myself, because I have an imprint for that style of projecting out and like tracking other things, but like kind of being frozen in the body is I just got a lot of really amazing therapy around it, and I learned, you know, the frame, like certain frames around personality types that are based on different kinds of trauma patterns. And so I did some trauma therapy. I'm still doing it, and we're just sort of reteaching the body that it's delicious to be here, and it's safer to be here. And I think the more that I do that, the more I have an experience of having a beautiful place for those parts of me that have developed all of these skills to like come and have a place to inhabit. And then I don't feel like I'm traveling out in the same way that that I have in the past when I wasn't totally clear on it being a safe place to be in the body.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about, so this creativity, this can tie into your, you know, you have the online course coming up. So one of the big questions I have is where the songs, let's just start with the songs.
Sure.
Where do they come from, right? That's kind of like the big question. Like, where do they come from? How do we access this kind of creativity? You know, you know,
where do our thoughts come from?
Where do our thoughts come from?
Where do our thoughts come from?
Luckily, I'm the one asking the questions right now.
I know. Where do our thoughts come from? Where does the idea that I should go downstairs and do the laundry come from? Where does the idea of like, oh, what I want to make for dinner come from? Where does all this come from? Who knows? It's pretty mysterious. It's like, is it a result of all of our previous frames? Is there just a spontaneous creation happening? Is there like a mythic realm where muses come with fully formed song babies to find the right instrument that's open enough to receive them and spit them over there? You know, I think all of these are possible. I've had experiences of like the more sci-fi version of it and I've had the experience of a version of just working hard on doing the thing that I love, and I've had songs come all the way in between. And so I don't know if I'll ever be able to answer that question with a straight face. I think I can only poetically muse about it as if it was this like great unanswerable question that I get to spend the rest of my life delighting in trying to figure out or writing about, and never having the right answer, but all of them being like, it not matter. It's like all of the answers get to be this bouquet of beauty that we all just get to like, yeah, awesome. Sure. The song came from that. How fun.
But some artists will say like, oh, I was just, you know, sitting there and the whole song just like appeared. But kind of like you mentioned one of those are one of the options. Like this song just was right there. It was just like, I heard the whole thing and here it is. And then other artists I've heard say like, they're working really hard at the song. They'll get like a little, like maybe a line, or they'll get a little thing, and maybe it takes a couple of years to like get the whole thing to fit together and piece together. And so do you find like sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other, or it's a combination of the two?
I think it's all of them. You know, I think from my experience as a songwriter, there are some songs that just come as this like gift, almost like a lucid dream. And it was just like, oh, what a blessing. And then there's other times where I'm just like, I'm doing my due diligence to write music, and I'm kind of chasing, and they're all different. It's like each one of them has a different quality. And I think, my job as a writer is to just keep writing, to keep showing up. And some muses are going to be harder to wrestle with, and some of they're going to just come and like lightning strike you. And I think about it all the time, because I think consciousness and how the like what I'm going to call the creative life force that runs through all things, I think that there is this thing that is constantly moving forward through us. It's like learning, like moving us towards greater realization, all of us, every living form. And I think that we experience it as epiphany, as idea. And like, is it just like we have really great software to then suddenly the conditions are right and the creative life force moves through us, and then like the epiphany forms as a result of just consciousness evolving. And I think one of the ways that it does that is through artistic ingenuity or artistic inspiration. It's like one of the expressions of consciousness just continuing to go further in whatever path of expansion that it's on. And like I get to be on the ride in collaboration with, as someone who gets to reflect on this crazy process of incarnation.
And is there a way to help make the conditions right?
Definitely. I think that that's one of the sort of that's like the job of an artist.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's their actual job. The job
Mm-hmm.
isn't to be like the job isn't to have great ideas. The job of an artist is to create the conditions that a great idea would rise.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of ways to do that. Everyone certainly is different in their creative process, but I definitely have things that I love to do that really help me out for creating conditions. You know, great sleep will do it sometimes, like good food, rest. But all of these things aren't devastating. I've had terrible rest and like terrible food, and have been terribly confused about where I was going to live or what relationship I was going to be in. And I made great art during those times too. So it's not a cut all, but I think in this stage of my life, because I'm in a flow and I really want to produce as much art as possible. So for me to stay in a consistent level of like, it's like I'm like in a marathon experience in staying with energy of life force as it sort of like rattles inside of me. That takes it now as a discipline. It's like a yoga practice. It's a thing I have to do every day, even when I don't want to. Even when I don't want to show up for whatever rehearsal I have or whatever. I'm tired. It's like I show up into the mat and then like I'm having a great time and then I'm so glad I did it. And I was like, oh, it's awesome. It's like it's just becomes part of the lifestyle. Like I have now organized my whole life to do this thing that I'm committed to. And it's, yeah, it all kind of keeps me on track. But there are a lot of conditions that I have. It's like if you're going to be hired by the Muse to do her bidding, like you have to kind of do there's just things that come with the job description.
Mm-hmm. Is meditation or mindfulness practices, is that a component for you?
Definitely. Yeah. Meditation, mindfulness practice is a big component for me. And right now, body movement has become another part of keeping a balanced flow. And, I'd say a lot of the conditions that help me stay really in the flow of creativity is having relationships that are really healthy, like not having too many, things that are tugging on my psyche and like
I think the term is energy vampires.
Yeah, and like energy vampires can show up in the form of people or projects or ideas or habits or media or how I'm relating to different collective dramas. Like those all can occupy ranges inside of my consciousness that are going to pull on my attention, because there's problems that want solutions, and like I'm one who's like, oh, I can create solutions, but if I'm like constantly creating solutions for all this stuff, then I have less energy to problem solve around like, wow, how am I going to make this chord really the right thing? So I think all of the energy that one could expend in life, just like using the parts of our brain that are going to be like churning things and solutions. I think we just have to be deliberate if we're going to be artists and committed to artists, that we just know like, wow, there's going to be so many things that want that quality of presence and problem solving and creativity. And we have to be deliberate as to what we say yes to and what we say no to. So as an artist, I have increasingly stronger boundaries around what I'm saying yes to and engaging with my time and energy, just because I really, out of selfishness, I want to create as much as possible. And so I make less time for shit that isn't that.
I think that's a great point. I mean, I feel like the most important thing we have is our attention, right? And like a lot of things are pulling at our attention, And I think, yeah, to be deliberate with our intention and to have, it feels to me like you have like, this is like, you feel clear inside that this is your purpose. This is your dharma. This is why you're here. And so you want to give your attention to it and not be distracted. And the media, I think, is a big one that is a big, I think people feel like they have some kind of obligation or they're supposed to, or it's their job to like tune into every single media thing that's coming in. It's like, and they get really worked up and spun out. And it's like, you don't have to, you can tune it out for a couple of days or a week or, or a year or whatever you want. It's your life,
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome advice. Yeah. I imagine related to that is who you are choosing to spend your time with, who you're choosing to give your time to. Like you're probably choosing to give your time to people who are also creative, who are also, or at least supportive of your creativity and are on this kind of path of exploring the muse with you.
Totally. I'd say most of my close connections are people who I'm like actively in co-creation with. Cause they're all really good friends of mine and we bonded over our mutual love of creativity and then we're creating together. And now we have these like friendship gardens that we get to tend to and like play together. And that's, I'd say most of my close kin are in that.
Yeah, I think I've seen you co-creating with Elijah Ray and Rising Appalachia and a couple other people that I know that are really on this kind of conscious musical path.
Yeah,
like
those
you.
are all beautiful kin. Yeah, Elijah and I just ran 2 awesome online classes for vocal core resonance where we taught about how to work with the voice in some of these multi-dimensional magical ways to create containment and be able to like gather as much of our energy to focus on creative process and open our voice, open our truth, like be more in the body. So a lot of the stuff that we've just talked about, we teach in our online class.
And I saw you were on IG Live with my friend Truth Eye, who's in Asheville also.
Truth Eye, he's an old school friend. He knew me back in my college days. Truth Eye.
Is it California?
Yeah, in California. I knew Truth Eye since before you and I met.
Yeah.
In Vegas.
Yeah. 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 It's fun how these things like they spiral and they come back around and the vibration is aligned. You keep connecting.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. What about like, cause I noticed all these things that you're saying to me, they're like living like a healthy, holistic life, just being like really clean and clear inside. I totally resonate with that. One of the things that I hear people thinking that they need to be creative is like some sort of substance outside themselves. And it could be different things. It could be mushrooms or psychedelics or marijuana or alcohol or whatever. There's a whole variety of different options. There's a whole menu of options these days. But you didn't say anything. You didn't mention any of those things. So I'm just wondering, like, is that necessary? Or is that something that's like required, or is it not required, or is it helpful, or what's your view on that?
I can see the role that catalysts for state changing can play a role for a lot of people getting out of their own way. And I've seen, we've seen it throughout history. People are taking psychedelics to like have a vision of the muse or of God or of the universe. And then they come back with all this information to create from. And some people have that state change experience through drinking and like taking off the edge of the stress so they can just like be in the flow or with pot. And I made a personal decision as a younger person to suspend my relationship on catalysts for creative energy because I had been smoking a lot of pot and I was depressed. It wasn't serving my path anymore. It was definitely like a crutch to manage trauma and emotional suffering. And so I think when I started studying energetic medicine and looking at the layers of my own psyche and emotional processes, I made a decision to just stop, and so because I wanted to feel, and those things sometimes can have a numbing effect, or we're not actually feeling, which for some people can help them create, and it just it depends on the person. But for me, I'm an advocate for for catalyst free creative adventures. And again, everyone has their own relationship and path, and I think there's a time and place for everything, but I've definitely had a lot of experience finding creative pathways inside of myself without the use of external catalyst. And I think that so I have discovered that it's not necessary. So do we need it? No, we don't need it. Absolutely not. Can it be helpful? I think for some people in some moments, totally. And when I stopped smoking, I definitely went through like a 9-month period where I didn't write any music. I hadn't related it to that until many years later. I was just like, wow, I'm in a drought. And then suddenly I found the access the music had to keep going, and the music changed for me after that. Like it was in a different thing, but I feel like I had to train myself to be able to access those places that can be opened up to when we go into these state changes. I was like, how do I do that through meditation? How do I just build a muscle of relationship with these parts of me? Because it's my own mind, it's like my own consciousness. Am I able and willing to do the work to be able to train my ability to access those states by myself, just as an experiment of autonomy and sovereignty in this body, and just to see like, wow, what is my body capable of? What is my will capable of? And I feel like, there's other ways to get also into flow states, that, exercise is a good way to do it. Dance is a good way to do it. Toning is a good way to do it. Just singing, like just putting on some rhythm is a great way to do it. And those are great ways for me to stay in the creativity. Cause those other things, while again, I think they can be helpful for some folks, for me, it just made me depressed and socially awkward and weird. And then I didn't want to be socially awkward weirdo. I wanted to be happy. And like,
we all want to be happy. Most of us anyway. Yeah, no, I think that's a really key point to me, is that it's not necessary, because a lot of people don't even realize that. They think that's the only way, to access creativity, especially I think younger people more. But that's great that you're an example of that. I think that's. Yeah. I mean, I think like, because young people, they smoke a little weed, and they're like, they have all these crazy ideas, and it's really creative. It's really exciting. I remember being young and smoking a little weed and being super interested in what was happening up in my mind and wanting to like get more of that. It makes a lot of sense, and finally exploring the mystical woes. But I feel like I'm more creative now, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's much more sustainable too, because you're not having to go to something outside of yourself continually.
Yeah. It's just I'm not engaged in things that are making me more neurotic than I already am.
Right. Well, that leads into what I was gonna inquire. It feels like this creativity you're talking about, it requires accessing some level of stillness, right? Some level of presence that's deeper than just the surface level of the mind. Does that resonate with you?
Sometimes I think it's accessing a stillness, although I've had I think that's like a beautiful story, and I think there's truth to it. Like, oh yeah, we're going to access the stillness and find the creative burst. And I think I would probably teach that in a workshop. But like, if I'm being honest right now, I've had like wild furies of creativity that had nothing to do with stillness, that just had to do with suddenly I'm just in it. And there's no rhyme or reason. It's just suddenly a chaos has descended upon me that has lit my soul on fire, and now I'm chasing it. It's like the opposite of stillness. It's like, it's anything but stillness. I can't be still while I'm in it. I can't actually slow down. I'm like high on this song for a week. So I don't know how to describe that other than to say those moments feel like a miracle, and then the rest of the time I'm trying to just get still enough in myself to focus enough to have a deliberate decision that I'm going to pick up the guitar and do my practices. So I think there's like a way where stillness comes in to create structure and like presence, and then Yeah, and then there's those other times that I just described that it's the opposite.
Yeah, it's interesting because I always felt that stillness and you called the flow state earlier, like they seem like they're two different things, but they're actually like the same thing, just focused on a different aspect of it. Right?
Mm,
So you gave me an insight actually. You were talking. I'm like, I think what it actually is, it's like being undistracted. So
mm,
like all of my attention is on whatever it's on. There's
mhm.
not even, not even 5% is thinking about like, oh, I'm so mad that that person said it to me earlier today or whatever. Like everything is just like in what you said, like you're fully in it,
Mm,
so to be fully in it, it's like you're fully, like you hear athletes talk about like being in the zone, and it's like they're fully flowing with the moment, but there's also kind of this stillness at the same time. It's like these two different, they're obviously they're moving and doing things, and they're moving fast, but there's
mm,
also this kind of stillness underneath it, which creates the flow. But
mm.
I think underlying it's just like all of their attention is in the moment, right? I think that's what it is. It's like your attention's totally in what you're doing.
Wow. Yeah, the attention is
Yeah,
totally there. And there is something about, yeah, because that's not totally stillness, but
right.
it's like unwavering
Yeah,
connection.
I think people think of stillness, they think of like you're just like, but that's not how I'm seeing it. I'm
Hmm.
seeing it like the mind is quiet enough to just really hone in 100% on something.
Yeah,
You know?
undistracted,
Yeah, undistracted.
undistractable. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
totally.
yeah. And do you feel like this creativity, like it spills over into your life? Like you're just like there's a creativity that into how you live your life and your relatings with people and your decisions throughout the day.
I mean, yes, in so much that like my whole life is designed based on my kind of like creative process.
Hmm.
So like all of my relationships are infused because it's the stories that I'm telling. Oh, what did you do today? Oh, well, I'm doing all of this. It's like part of my everyday discussion with my closest kin. So they're all in on it with me. Um, there's never there's never really a moment of where it's not affecting my life because it is my
Hmm.
life. My life has completely arisen from this intense chase. and and so it's the thing that I'm doing, it's the thing that I'm training, it's the thing that I'm reflecting on, it's the thing that I'm resting from. It's the thing that is living me all the time. And so it's almost impossible to take perspective on myself from a vantage point where there's anything but that.
Hmm. So you're basically like devoting yourself to the muse,
Uh-huh.
which is the creative energy, which actually to me would be the source.
Hmm.
And it's like I like this term I use sometimes, the universal creative intelligence,
I
which
like that.
you could also call God if you want to use that term.
The
Um,
UCI, the Uki,
the UCI, yeah.
the
And so it's like
Uki.
you're devoted to like just having that live through you, like every moment. It feels like, and
Yeah,
through your art.
so my relationships are part of that. My house is part of that.
Hmm.
Where I'm living, part of that. It's all a mirror, and beyond like my relationship to creativity. That's just like the place where I get to stoke. It's really like relationship to like what's my relationship to being alive?
Yeah, to being
how's
alive,
this how's
to
this
the
going?
essence. Yeah, yeah. So you have an online course coming out, Courting the Muse.
I have an online course coming up called Courting the Muse. It's 7 weeks songwriting immersion, and this is the first time I've done this type of songwriting immersion that's open to everyone, and that is going to be exploring. Yeah, so a lot of some of the themes that we've talked about today
Yep,
are going to weave in there, but
yep.
I'm going to look at unpacking songwriting process. I'm going to be holding space in our workshops for us to write songs together. I'm going to be unpacking my songwriting process, and I'm going to be poetically waxing on and on and on about the muse and creativity and inspiration. And I'm going to be asking fun questions, and I'm going to be stirring the pot and adding ingredients and just providing a space for all of us who are joining, and there's a gaggle of us so far, we're gonna have a blast, so that we can get up inside of the sound, like how to and learn from each other, because everybody else is gonna bring in their own unique vantage point to like, what is it to get inside of the song, what is it to get inside the note and know myself in this music. And so we're going to be doing that together, and it's perfect, we're starting on election day, so that'll be a fun way.
That.
Regardless of what happens, we'll be carrying the energy through the winter, and just getting to relate to the mythos, and I think it's going to be a fun way to wrap up the year. 2020, this prolifically strange year, and how can we, even amidst great chaos and uncertainty, even then, how do we show up to the altar of creativity?
Nice. Yeah, whatever happens, there'll be music to make about it, right?
Of course.
there's always music to make about whatever's happening.
There's always music to make, and just like, I think, nourishing the soils of the tree of time again after it's been sprouting all kinds of strange fruit this season. So we're gonna come and gather the harvest and learn and make a pie and just eat it down and go like, that was what a life, and hopefully nourish ourselves so that we can continue to show up for this great game of incarnation, and do the best we can to have fun while we're here, and learn and grow, and be a part of this school of earth. And my hope is that people will have an experience of seeing themselves through courting the muse, is getting to know themselves more, and getting to cultivate a relationship with the mystery and with divinity in a way that it feels we're taking this thing that's out there, creativity, and like really marrying it with what's in here, with which is our own uniqueness, and getting to build that bridge of like, oh yeah, I'm a space for the idea of creative life force to come through. How can I become available to be a vessel for consciousness to expand through? And what does that mean? And being in relation, and like kind of being the hot seat with like how exciting that is.
Nice. I love that you mentioned being unique, and that's like one of the things that I really just again like really feel with you is there's no one else like you. Like, you're a unique artist, right? And so I just think that is part of when you're really accessing the authenticity of that muse. Then there's something unique, and there's probably like, because in my own creative endeavors, there's kind of can be this fear of like, well, you have to be like this person, you have to be like that, or that person's really popular, you have to try to be like them or be like them. But I just feel like you're really yourself, uniquely yourself, and that's an accomplishment in itself. So congratulations on that.
Thanks. I've done plenty of aspiring and learning from imitating other artists that I thought were great, and I think that's a natural part of learning and of growing as in any kind of art. And then it's just like the healthy stretching what's possible through mirroring and imitation and learning. And then and
you gotta throw it all away.
Eventually we just start playing jazz. So just like, cool, I figured out that part, and like that. And that's the funny thing about imitation, is we can never really do it. It's always us anyway. And so I think it's been a big surrender for me, because I think I have felt for a long time like such like a weird little duck. I'm like, where do I fit into the great cosmic song? I'm so obsessed with it. I want to find my note to sing. And that's the thing, is like, well, I'm not going to find my note by I can discover myself in proximity to other notes. And I think that's the magic of collaboration, and of like being that we're all these vessels for the sound. It's like, oh yeah, of course I'm going to echo with all of the other notes that are here. And we do that for a while until we're just like, okay, this is my note, and I got to change my note. My note's here over here now. Oh, now it's here. And it's like, it's still me. And so it's been, and I think an ongoing surrendering and relaxing, and just uncovering of of creative self. And I feel like I barely am scratching the surface of what's mine to create in this life. I feel like I'm just now figuring it out.
Nice. You have a new album that's came out, right?
My new album called Sapphire, which I love. I feel like I've been trying to write this album since I started writing music. And so it feels fun. And I feel like it's just finally cleared the way for the next thing, which next time we talk will be the thing I'm like, this is what I was really trying to
Right.
do the whole time.
Right.
I feel like that's always the way it goes. I'm like, okay, that was just a thing I had to do to get to this one. Oh, okay, now this one gave me the key, but it's really this one over here. And but that being said, I really love Sapphire. I feel like me and my collaborator Joshua Penman really got to something beautiful and true we're both really happy about, and it feels really good to be sharing it with the world. And definitely come check it out. There's an hour-long lyric video that accompanies it that Tessa made, my bestie Tessa. She made this amazing, prolific visual feast to accompany the video. It's glorious. And it's for me, it's just been a fun way to share the soul of the music and like give it a realm to accompany, like getting to play in that multimedia. It's just like, oh yeah, it's going to be visual and color and sound and elemental. And we're going to put it's going to be fully an experience of that muse. So I feel happy that we did our version. We did the best we could to transmit something.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like to me, like the most awakened consciousness is the one where you're accessing the essence and you're able to express it in this world. You know? And to me, like it's not, generally speaking, for me, it's not like the priest or the minister or whatever that realm is. It's the artist, it's the artist that's really accessed that place and is able to like create from that place. So that's why, like, for me, like this podcast, you could say is, I don't even use the word spiritual all the time, but you could, it's about awakening of consciousness, or it's about this presence. But I find like a lot of people I like to talk to are artists like you, who are really like accessing this and bringing it out into the world. So really grateful to connect with you today, and really grateful that you're in the world and sharing your music and your light and your creativity. And
thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Thank all of you for being here.
Yay. Have a wonderful day.